Hello, everyone. We're back doing another interview for International Women's Day, which I'm turning into International Women's Month because why not a month? The theme for this year's International Women's Day is Inspire Inclusion. And so, what I'm doing is each day this month from March 8th to April 8th, I am interviewing someone who I think has a great story, who I admire, who I like. I'm only interviewing people I like. Um, and so today, I'm interviewing Tetiana. Actually, let me change my screen view just for a second. I want to make sure we're both, there we go. I'm interviewing Tetiana and I want her to quickly introduce herself.
Hi everyone, my name is Tetiana. I was born in Ukraine and at the moment I live in beautiful Australia. I'm a senior product manager for Camplify and CHL and Paul Kemper. And for the last 10 years I've been moving around careers. I've been moving around all the places, and I've been moving also physically and mentally, and I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me, Leah.
I'm so excited. This is going to be so much fun. Tatiana and I know each other because, I mean, now it's been years ago. She and another person invited me to come speak on a podcast because I had met one of their professors and they said, "Hey, would you come talk on a podcast?" So I did that. And then she and I stayed in touch and we kind of throughout the pandemic, we talked at least once a month. And got to know each other and I could give advice when she needed some, but also just for, built a friendship. And so when I started thinking about people to ask to do this, I thought of her. Anything you want to add about how we know each other?
Yeah, it was so lovely actually. When Eva just introduced us, I was like, oh my gosh, she's so amazing. Leah's just so amazing. The energy that you are sharing, and I'm actually so happy that you're running your blog now and the consultancy and the coaching, because you are when you were just sharing with me on this monthly basis, this energy, I was so privileged. I was so inspired and so motivated, and I'm so happy now that more people have access to that, and you're just spreading it, spreading the love all over the place. And I think,
Thank you. I
oh,
appreciate that.
I have no idea how many times in my day-to-day life I would refer to, oh, I Leah once told me this. My mentor mentioned me this, and I would always mention that, and it's
That's
it's
so
just
sweet.
it's amazing.
I love it.
I
Well,
don't
thank you. It's lovely. It was certainly you and a few others that inspired me to say, "Hey, I could maybe I want to do this for good. Like this is my career." So I appreciate it. So we're going to dive in and I have a handful of questions. And I like to start with like, tell us about your journey. Like, how did you get from where you were to where you are today? And you can tell that story however you want.
So as I mentioned, I was born in Ukraine, and when I was 17, I absolutely didn't know what to do in my life. And there were there were so many voices. They would tell me what I cannot do. And someone would say, you can't do tech because, it's for boys. I mean, it was 16 years ago. So at that time it was male dominated much industry much more than now.
Yeah.
So there were, I would say, oh, I want to be a designer, and there were voices would say, oh, but you can't draw, how can you be a designer? And then I would say, oh, I will be a manager, and they're like, oh, who am I going to manage, like men? So there were more conversation of what I cannot do rather than what I can do. So the easiest way was just like, how about you just become a teacher? It's from 8 till 1, you're in school, and then after 1, you're just looking after your husband and kids. That was a little bit of a perspective that I had when I was 17. I was born in a small town. It's like 7,000 people town, almost village. And there was like one school, not much of something exciting in the future to do if I would choose to go was the easiest way.
Right.
And that's why I went to study languages. So I have a master's degree in linguistics and literature, and I got my bachelor in one university, and then I challenged myself. I was like, so if I want to get a master, how about I get it in the best university in the country? So I was like, I went to the best university in the country, and I was among 10 people who graduated. And I was like, okay, so how about I challenge now myself for this? How about you challenge myself for that? So I started to study German aside. So I started to be curious about other things. And then somehow my curiosity overcame all those voices, and I started to be like, okay, but how about I just try things and you know um just see what it's bring where it goes. So long story short of I was I was traveling, I was studying abroad. I'm not from wealthy family, so it was just something that I was working for very hard, and something what I was basically making for myself. And it was so funny because I think all the jobs that one day I've been told that I'm not able to do, I did a little bit. For example, when I was 22, my friend reached out to me. She said, "Oh, I have like a design agency. Do you want to help me to design a few things?" And I'm like, "I cannot design." She said, like, "Well, you can learn." And I'm like, "True, that's true. I actually can learn that." So
Mhm.
I was designing a little bit for her agency. And then well, obviously I work in tech, and I am manager, and
See?
I don't have mainly men in my team usually. So it is just so funny because when I look back, I just think that all the things that one day were told that I cannot do, I actually did. And you know, I did it twice even.
Right.
You know?
Totally. Totally. So when you think about like when you think about those kind of all of that progression, tell us about a moment that you felt really empowered. Like as a woman, it doesn't have to be tech related unless you want it to be, like you decide. But tell us about a time when you felt empowered, when your confidence was like, "Oh yeah, I know what to do here."
Hmm. I wish it was on a positive note. Unfortunately, it was a little bit on a negative. I had and when I was 24, I had a very complex breakup
Mhm.
with my partner of that time. And at some point I was like, okay, probably okay, I have to start my life from scratch. I have to find myself. I have to find my inner voice. I have to find my calling.
Mhm.
And I yeah, and you will cut the silence, bro.
Okay, you're
And
okay.
yeah, I'm just thinking about right words. So I had to find my inner calling. I had to find my inner voice, and I was just using everything what I could
Yeah.
to make it happen. So it wasn't something when I felt like, okay, now I'm so empowered. It was something like, okay, now you're by yourself, kid. Do what you gotta do. And I just did it. I think I think I think the most empowered moments for me were when I would just work so hard. I would just work one day, 60 days, 300 days. And then one day I wake up and things are just puzzling in, and everything suddenly is good.
Yeah.
Those moments would be like for me, so if I work hard, if I'm being committed and dedicated and stubborn in a good way, then one day I will just wake up and I will be so lucky.
Well, and so it sounds like, I mean, I think that's really interesting, and I think it's helpful to other people that are paying attention. This thing is going to jump, so just be prepared. There we go. Uh, so there's like, I think we sometimes think of confidence or empowerment as like a moment in time, and then we're suddenly struck with magical amounts of empowerment, when really it's sometimes like baby steps towards something until one day you go, oh, actually, I feel confident about this part of my life, or I feel, empowered in this area of my life. And so it builds on itself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And my favorite part, I already get used to that, but at some point, I was a little bit offended when people would come to me and say like, "Oh my God, you're so lucky. You like studied this, or you moved to Berlin,
Right.
or you moved now to Australia, or you moved somewhere else." And I'm like, first you work so hard, so then people can say that you're lucky.
Lucky. Yeah, no, totally. I feel the same way. Even when I started my coaching business, somebody, I was like talking about it, and somebody said, well, that's, lucky that you're able to do that. And so I started using that same phrase. And a friend of mine said, you're not lucky. I've known you for years. You work hard. And I was like, yeah, okay, that's fair. But I think you're right. There is this like, you work really hard and then people go, oh, look how lucky you are. Okay.
Did you remember we had a chat? We had a chat actually, I think in June when I just moved to Australia for my short-term assignment. And I was telling you that I'm so lucky, I'm so privileged to be here and to have everything what I'm having, and they're loving me and they're looking after me. And you were the one who told me, like, well, that's not what luck means.
Look,
I saw you looking very bad. And you were actually the one who reminded me of, like, yeah, true. I was doing so much. I was busy over the whole Christmas and New Year doing research, understanding what is happening, how things are working, where I fit into the new picture and everything, and calling you and asking your advice and that, and then I forgot that and just believed that I'm a bit lucky.
yeah, a little lucky. Well, not really. I mean, that was hard work. No, I totally felt even the idea of like the team rallying around you and supporting you. A lot of that was because that's what you had done. You were working early mornings and late nights to try to cover all the territory between Berlin and Australia, which is a lot of ground. Um, and so yeah, they were warm and inviting and welcoming. And I was like, that's not luck. That's you, and you created a relationship, right? And but it's hard to see sometimes when we're like in it.
That is true. That
Yeah, yeah. So what do you think? So this inner voice, you talked about this, like over time, really having to listen to your inner voice. What does that, how does it show up, your inner voice? Like, how has it shown up at different times, and how have you known to say, yeah, I should do that?
mm, I think it's worth mentioning, and I really love mentioning it in every single conversation I have, that it's been already 7 years since I've been to therapy, and seeing psychologists every single week helps me not only to reflect on everything what is happening in my life, but also to find this voice and to be able to hear it and to listen to this, and sometimes to slow down, and sometimes to calm down, and sometimes to accept what is inevitable, or sometimes to seek for a change. And that's how I found it. That's definitely how I started seeking it, and that's what helped to excel in my career. Um, how do I listen to it every day? Um, I think at some point I gained enough confidence just to be sure that, yep, that's that's how I want it to be. That's what I want. That's what I deserve. That's what makes me happy, and that's what serves my needs.
Yeah.
And whenever something doesn't serve my needs, that doesn't belong to me anymore.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And I think we struggle so much, um, often in this kind of transition from, I don't know, maybe from youth into maturity and adulthood, right? Where there can be so many different voices that are in our head, and it gets a little noisy, right? And some of them are really critical, some of them sound like someone else, right? And so it's almost, in the coaching space, we call it thought catching, right? So you have to be able to catch the thought and say, is that true? And then send it off on its way if it's not, and then take it in if it is. And I think what sounds like you've really done, a lot of work in order to say, hey, I know what I sound like and I know what's true. Which helps when imposter syndrome or negative voices, or like the criticism that can show up come in, right? Because you can say, wait a minute, that doesn't sound accurate, right? And I think
Right.
that can be really important for us.
Also, this year I started running,
Okay.
and last week I had my first ever 5K. And it is a massive win because I never was a runner. I never was anything about sport. So I'm so happy. And now I've learned that running is actually such a powerful tool, because whenever I feel overwhelmed, whenever I feel hectic, whenever I feel that I am just like all over the place, I'll just go for a run. It will
Nice.
clean my mind, and I'll just back and sort my thoughts out. It's just so amazing. I'm sad I didn't explore it earlier, but better
Yeah,
later than never.
yeah,
So
totally. The Australians
it
are
is.
impacting you.
Oh God, they are. All of them are running all the time.
No, I think it's amazing. I think there are things like running, yoga, that are ultimately, they're good for our body, but they're also ultimately meditative, right? And they allow your brain to get a little still, and you go, okay, wait a minute. Clear the noise. I need to hear myself, right? And I think that can be so, so important.
It's amazing. Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome. So talk to me about how you have pushed forward when you have faced obstacles, and what kind of support system or group of people you've tried to put around yourself so that you can do that.
So when I was going through complicated situation and I was just starting to understand where am I standing, what I'm doing, I really sat with myself and I thought, what do I do the best? What do I know? At that time, I was like, okay, I know English,
Mhm.
obviously,
Yeah.
and I need a place where I will learn something. When I need a place who will believe in me and who teach me. So I started to seek for places who would be interested to hire someone to teach. Then when I just started working in business development, it was 2015. My day would be divided into three parts. I would be working 8 hours, then I would be studying 8 hours, and then I will be sleeping 8 hours. Don't repeat that. That's not healthy. Um, but that was a critical moment for me when I put all the effort in the world to make to make that happen, to put the proper basics. My brother, he's a software developer, so he could stay with me late hours and explain me everything, explain me how servers are working, but how database are working, everything what I didn't know and everything what I never thought that I will understand.
Yeah.
Actually, I didn't understand.
Yeah.
And so that for the half a year, that was a lot of work I put to put all the proper basics.
Mhm.
And in half a year at that work, I was promoted to be head of department, actually, because I'm out of started as a trainee, started as an internship, just because I know English and I am eager to learn. In half a year, I got promoted to the head of department. And then I moved to a different company, which was already operating on US market, and then all the beautiful things starts to start because there were a lot of people to learn from, and there were a lot of interactions with developers, with designers, with marketing, with operations. And that's where I would say in 2016 my product management started to kick in, because
Yeah.
there was also a guy, and he was a very senior product manager. And I would come to him and ask questions. I would be so curious, and I would start to be like, what about this? What about that? What about that? And he would also tell me a few things here and there. That was a software development agency, so that was not like a product company, which I was lacking a little bit in Ukraine at that time, the, generally because of specifics. So later on, I was like, I love this, but I also don't like it. And I was like, what exactly I don't like? I don't like that I don't want to work on the product. I don't like that I don't own something. I don't like that contractual and agency, all this. That's not fully my cup of tea. So I started to see more like a niche product companies that I can work on. And that's how I moved to Berlin. I took a couple of courses. I met some nice people. I made some connections. I worked in a few different places. And in 2021, I joined the company where I am now, which was acquired last winter. And now I am part of a publicly listed CHL company as a senior product manager.
Awesome. That's so cool because it's not, I mean, it's like along the way, like with your brother or with the, with the product manager or whatever, it's like people sort of show up who sort of can move you, like give you information, you can ask questions, you can get some help and move you forward. And I think what that also, I know that you also have been that person for others. And so it's this like reciprocal sort of community feeling of let's being available for questions and being willing to ask them, right? And I think that that's a huge part of what makes us successful and makes us able to chase our curiosity. And I think that's so important for what we do. Yeah,
I
super.
think if there are two major things that I would highlight here is that I am a generalist, and I just read today that generalists make the best product managers, and I also I'm a specialist too, but I just want to comfort myself that as a generalist, I fit into this role, because product management is so much about everything everywhere at once,
Yeah.
just doing everything, whatever you've seen that needs to be done. And uh, so I think that my personality fits it very well. And I was just so happy when I discovered it, because I was like, damn, that's like me.
Yeah.
That's my thing.
I'm a thing. I have a thing. Yeah.
But can you imagine, like, when I was 17, I couldn't find this thing. So I was like, yeah, whatever, I will do whatever I can. And then it took me like, what, 8 years to find it.
Yeah.
So
Love
when
it.
I found it, I was like, that's me. That's my personality.
Yeah. Yeah.
And look, and and you know that I'm striving in my career, and I'm loving it. Love every single day. I love doing it. And no matter what is the pressure, no matter what's the scope of work, no matter what the working hours, countries, continents, I'm just love doing it. Every single day I'm loving it.
I love it. And we should get to, if I think especially really curious people, you there can be a tendency with curious people to sort of chase thing after thing after thing. But when you find something that lights you up, that makes you excited, that makes you feel like, "Ooh, I want to do that some more." I'm a big believer in just go after it. Like chase that until you go, okay, now there's something else, right? But I think that's you should get to love what you do. We spend a lot of time doing it, right? And it's hard and it can be hard work. Product management's not an easy job, right? And so you should get to love it if you're doing it. So, okay, I'm going to ask you, I have two more questions. One question. Tell me what you love the most about Australia.
Oh, I live 8 minutes walk from the beach.
I love that.
Is it a good question? Is it a
That's a
good
great
answer? Is it a
answer.
correct answer? I can just grab, like, also there is a fruit farm next to me, and I just went there. I bought like passion fruit, dragon fruit, all the other fruits, like big basket like this, and that's the only food I'm eating. And I just do fruit salad, go to the beach, Sydney, watch ocean, and
Sounds
just enjoy my life.
terrible. How
I
are you
know.
handling it? Do you need me to send you anything? Sounds
Just come
terrible.
over. Come
I
over.
will. I will. It's funny to me in my brain as we're talking. I'm like, the last time we sat across from each other was in a restaurant in Berlin. Now you're in Australia and I'm in the UK, and we're just like totally different. Things are so different, right? What can happen in a little over a year, right? So it's crazy. So super, super fascinating.
To add just a little bit to your point, something came to my mind. And I think it's also, I'm very privileged because I'm quite flexible in my life. So I can allow myself to chase opportunities. And I know that many people might not have this freedom,
Right.
but this also helped me a lot because whenever I see that something cool and happening, I'm just jumping in, and I'm just one decision away from that. And
Yeah.
that's probably worth mentioning. That's why things are working for me in certain ways. Mm,
And even
because
that goes back to what you said, like people will say, "Oh, you're so lucky," or "It's so fun. You're so courageous. I get to watch this." But there is courage there, but there's often a little bit of fear underneath the courage, right? And so you have to take the leap, but it's saying like, "Okay, this is an opportunity and I want it," right? So I've been there too, and it's super, super fascinating. All right, last question. If you could give younger you some advice that maybe younger women out there right now that are watching this would take a little nugget from, what would you tell her?
so first of all, I would say I would really hug myself very tight, and I say, girl, you will go through so much crap in your life, but you got this.
Yes.
That will be the only thing that I would say. Second thing that comes to my mind is that if I could travel in time to say 16, 17 years older me, I would just say that people are telling you that you can't because they cannot.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
But you
But you
can.
can, and you're going
And
to be all right.
and if you know, I've never been a sport person. Like I never been, but last week I ran 5K.
Right.
Do you think people didn't tell me that I couldn't?
Right. Exactly. No, I love that. That's great advice. And I think for everybody listening of any age, like the ability to say, if you're being told all the time that you can't do something, question that because it's not up to them, whoever they are that are saying it, right? Like question it, dig in and say, is that true? So I love that. That's great advice for younger you. I love that. Well, thank you
Yeah.
so much for doing this with me.
Can I just add this? I'm
Yeah, of
sorry,
course.
but one day you taught me something. One day you taught me that whenever someone tells me something, to think if this person has a seat actually at my table
Yes.
of decision making. Do you remember you told me this?
I don't
I'm
remember
like,
specifically telling you, but that is one of the things I tell people a lot.
that
So
is actually what I like every time someone is telling me something, I'm like, are you even having a seat at my table? You are not.
it's a small table.
It's a small table. It's probably me, myself, and I there.
I mean, my table has a handful of people at it, but it is a small table. Everyone else, I'm like, oh, thank you. So yeah, no, I mean, I really do ascribe to that because I think otherwise, I really learned that when I worked at Amazon, and at one point I was like, I have given Amazon a seat at the table to define who I am, and it's just a company, right? And so I was like, no, you don't get to sit at the table. You're a company, right? And so I had to re-examine like who's at the table and do they earned the seat, right? By being loving and kind and generous with me, but also honest with me, right? But other than that, no one gets to sit at the table. Thank you very much. There's a table somewhere over there for you. So no, I love that that has stuck with you because I think it's been helpful for me over the years. So I'm pretty sure I stole it from Brene Brown, just for the record. So, all right, awesome. Well, thank you so much for spending time with me today and answering my questions and inspiring others. For those of you who are watching this, you'll notice that there's a QR code in the corner of this screen. You can donate to the Malala Fund if you'd like. Malala Fund helps educate women and girls, often in places where they have had limited education, but also girls who are seeking STEM education and want to have a bit more opportunities and better opportunities. So if you would like to donate, feel free to take that QR code and give a little money to the Malala Fund. All right. It was so good to see you, and I will talk to you soon.
See you soon. Bye bye.